Bob, welcome to the income flip, my friend. How are you?
Great, Rob. Thank you for having me.
It's my pleasure. On the income flip, one of the areas that we explore is how busy people can start turning what I call their active income into highly leveraged income through business ownership or asset ownership. And today we're going to explore the world of buying and owning franchises and businesses, and what better person to bring in than you to have that discussion. So I'm excited to unpack that, Bob. But before we get into that, like I always love to explore the story of the person that's on the podcast that led them to the path that they're on today. So give us some context, who you are, where you're from.
Yeah, I was a high school, college athlete, went to Seton Hall University on a track scholarship, and that's the only thing I was interested in was tracking girls at the time. So I wasn't never a good student, but got out, couldn't trying to find my way, figure out what I wanted to do. Did a little of this, did a little of that, tried my hand at some independent businesses that worked marginally. I fell into franchising when in 1986. I hate to admit at this point, I was a kid in my 20s, but begged, borrow, and stole to get my first West Coast video franchise.
Oh yeah. Oh
Remember
cool.
that?
Yeah.
And you know where that industry is today, right?
Oh yeah.
So that taught me a valuable lesson as well. But yeah, I got that first unit open, and I opened in December of 1986. That January, there was about 100 units in the chain at that point. That January, it became the top unit in the chain,
Mm.
performance-wise. So that really, hey, man, I cracked the code, and so that allowed me to move on and open a second, third, fourth, and in the Philadelphia and surrounding communities. And then I went up to New York as well and started opening. And of course, again, where that industry is. But I've owned multiple franchise concepts that I've built and sold. I got bit by the franchising bug at that point. It just made too much sense to me. I've tried my hand at independent businesses,
Hmm.
and I've done well with one or two, and I've done not so well with more than one or two of those. But ego kept bringing me down, kept bringing me back down that path. But I've always had success with the franchises that I've gotten involved with, even when they're not so great organizations. But you have a roadmap to an extent. But yeah, I spent ever since I've been involved in franchising. I got involved in consulting a couple of decades ago. My initially I was involved in consulting, working with franchise companies, helping them position for growth.
Hmm.
And then just by osmosis, so many people that I knew were coming to me and asking me, "Hey, can you help me find the right franchise? I have no idea where to start." And so I'm helping people, and then I'm helping more people, and I'm helping more people. Like, damn, man, I'm putting a lot of time into this. Why don't I monetize this? And one of the organizations that I used previously to help grow another company, I remembered they performed incredibly well. A company called Franchise, a consulting group. So I reached out to them. We had some conversations, and I said, "This might make sense. I'd like to supplement what I'm doing now with this, in addition to owning franchises." And I joined that, and that was close to 10 years ago, I think, at this point. And things have gone real well. And in addition to being, a franchisee multiple times, and I was CEO of a national franchise chain for a brief period of time before we sold. I continue to be a franchise owner. The most recent one I bought was a concept called Game Day Men's Health. I bought that little over 2 years ago. The first unit I opened was 17 months ago, and then I bought six. The second unit opened about 7 months ago, so I have
Wow.
four more to go. But going great. The way I fell into that, it was actually working with a client, a local client, showed him that concept, and he just fell in love with it. He just didn't have the capital to execute. So I said, "John, would you want an investor?" He said, "Sure." And so we ended up, let's talk about three. And then three turned into six. And he has some skin in the game. He's the operator. My total involvement is a 1 hour Zoom call per week. My first
Hmm.
unit, like I said, opened 17 months ago. I'm already tracking at over 100K a month. Hit profitability in month 9. So it takes a little while to
Wow.
build it up.
That's awesome.
Yeah, but it means since then it's just it's a reoccurring revenue model.
Mm.
membership based, which I really like those. They sell at a much higher multiple,
Hmm.
and it's continued to grow. So like we'll probably do 120 this month, and we're looking at about a 30% profit margin on that. So it's something I could probably sell for 1.5 to $2 million tomorrow. My investment was 350.
Hmm.
And my second unit opened, it was a little less than 350, and it's actually tracking. It's earlier in the game, but it's tracking a little better than my first unit. So I'm really pleased with the purchase. And my plan is, and now that I'm on the wrong side of 60, I don't want to stay in things forever. So I have a horizon with anything I get into. 3 to 5 years, I want to be positioned to sell this and step away from it, and then potentially move on to another venture.
What is the concept?
It's a men's health concept. It does hormone replacement therapy, ED treatment, weight loss, peptides. Hot category,
Yeah, great
obviously.
category.
Yeah. There's a couple of others that have merged in that category. Look, when I tell people about what I got into and like, well, can I get into it? Like, sold out nationwide and Canada in 17 months. The entire U.S. and Canada sold out for that because, again, such a strong financial model, and really hot category and membership reoccurring revenue based. But there's a couple others that have emerged now. One of which I'm really super high on that I think. Actually, I don't want to compete against them, so that's one of the reasons. I'd rather be out in maybe 3 years, 4 years from now.
Hmm. Interestingly enough, before you and I hopped on the phone or on this podcast, we I mentioned something years ago. I remember a mentor of mine said, "Rob, I've made so much more money owning businesses versus owning real estate." He's like, I look at owning real estate as insurance policies, and I look at owning businesses as just cash machines when you actually know how to operate them at a high level. And at the time, I've always made all my money in real estate, and so I was like, oh well, that's interesting, right? I was like, but it seems so unpredictable, right? As a business owner, and I was, learning how to be a business owner. I didn't fully understand how to create predictable income through the systems and through models and understanding the money math. But he did, which is why he was able to kind of compound and build actually one of the largest brokerages in the entire world. And then years later, once I understood more about how to play that game, I'm like, oh, I totally get it, right? I could invest 100,000 into opening up another office doing what I'm doing, or that same 100,000 into a piece of real estate, and my return on that office is going to be exponentially higher than on that piece of real estate. Although there is still, I love buying real estate. Everybody on here knows I love buying real estate
I
because
do as well. Yeah.
yeah, they over time those things just become little banks. That's how I look at them as like future stores of
But
value.
it's time,
Right?
right?
It's time. It's time. Yeah. So I'd love to understand how you think about all of this and the clients that you typically serve that end up buying these kinds of franchises and or buying into these. My as a business owner, my biggest concern always for anybody buying a business is like, well, oftentimes people trade 40 hours, in corporate America to own their own thing, and now they're working 80 hours, right? That's kind of like the joke. But maybe not so much in some of the businesses if you start looking at it as like a pure investor. So let's unpack that.
Yeah, well, and you're absolutely right about that. I mean, it makes no sense for me if you are someone coming from corporate America and you're willing to walk away from your job or maybe do something on a semi-passive basis initially, but stepping into something and ending up putting more hours into that makes no sense to me. I'm not in favor of linear model type franchises where you are like a consulting franchise, where you are the product. Like what I'm doing right now as a consultant, it's linear. I can make great money doing it, but it's linear income. I do this large part. I continue to do this because it allows me to keep my ear to the tracks and know what's coming down the pike in terms of really good franchise opportunities, and that allows me in turn to serve my clients better. But in terms of positioning for like looking at this from a real estate standpoint and business ownership standpoint, I'm a real estate investor. I'm in a number of syndications, and they're great, and you don't put any time into them. but the returns aren't what you're going to see in getting in the right business. And potentially, I mean, I love real estate for the stability, but if you get into right franchise, it can be just as stable virtually as real estate, but you build equity at a much more rapid pace. It doesn't make sense for someone to jump in as an owner operator unless that's going to be for a short period of time. But there's plenty of brands over the last 10 years, especially, that have developed a more robust support platform. They've developed semi-passive models, meaning they're doing more things for the franchisees, so the franchisees don't have to jump into it even from day one, they don't have to jump into it full time. Okay, like with Game Day Men's Health, because I have a competent manager and he has some skin in the game, so I know he works his butt off. My total involvement in Game Day is a 1 hour Zoom call per week. And
Yeah,
that,
well, you're operating it like a real owner, right? And he has skin in the game, and he's essentially like a general manager or an operator of the business. And there's just different stages sometimes in life where you're at, and different knowledge base. Yeah, actually, now that I think about it, at Lifetime Fitness, I think that there's like a poster for Game Day on there.
really?
Possibly, some men's fitness or men's health around that. I want to say it's Game Day. Could be
Yeah,
wrong.
probably is. There's 950 sold between U.S. and Canada. About half are open at this point.
Wow. Well, who should own a franchise and who should run from a franchise? I'm curious.
Well, the second question's easier. Anybody that's not willing to follow a system, and that
Hmm.
often includes entrepreneurs that want to rewrite everything. They want to recreate the wheel and do it the way they want to. And honestly, when I first got into franchising, I had some of that in me, and I had to tone myself down and follow the system. That works if it's the right system. Okay, there's some bad franchisors out there. Here's what I tell all my clients when I start the process with them. Over 4,000 different brands out there. 70 to 75% of the brands that exist in franchising, honestly, I would go nowhere near. I don't think they're worthwhile opportunities. In most cases, you're buying yourself a job, and those are the ones I think should absolutely be avoided. Out of the other 25, 30%, there's some good ones, there's some better ones, there's some exceptional ones out there. Me in particular, I love things that are reoccurring revenue models or membership-based models where the customer's coming back again and again and again, and hopefully tied in via contract, and even things in the service category, the trades like HVAC now has pretty much become a reoccurring revenue model. All these places are charging like a monthly fee, and they'll come back 2 to 4 times a year, change their filters, check on things, and miraculously they always find it something else that's wrong, and then there's a big ticket, right?
Yeah.
But the approach I take with my clients is that I want to make sure any brand that they eventually get into is something that we can reliably predict that is going to be sold out in their market, and which would mean that typically it's going to be eventually sold out, predominantly sold out in markets around the country. And that puts them in a great position to be able to sell. And I'm
Interesting.
really a huge believer in having an exit strategy up front. I think it's absolutely critical. Tamps down the risk factor. So there's certain things I look to avoid when it comes to risk mitigation. But when it comes to finding the right franchise, getting into something that I know will eventually sell out in their market, and there's an art to that, and we can talk about that. But if it's going to sell out in their market, what happens is with that proliferation of that franchise in a given market becomes the awareness level rises dramatically. People are seeing the logo around town, they're seeing it on vans, they're hearing radio ads, they're seeing social media with that particular brand. And with that awareness comes a lot of inquiries into the company saying, hey, this really looks interesting. How do I get one of these? And that starts to frenzy in a given market. And then it sells out in that market. So if you can time it right, and that's the dirty little secret in franchising, it's all about timing.
Hmm.
If you can time it right and we can get on a brand that's just starting to take off at that point, starting to hit critical mass, and there's certain factors that I look for, and then I'll be able to determine if it's going to happen, then that's a beautiful place to be. Because if it sells out, puts you in a position, if you decide, or if life events dictate to you, I need to sell my business. There's illness, there's death, there's divorce. Going back to the franchisor, we're simply saying, hey, I want to put my business up for sale. They're getting all these inquiries, and if everything's sold around you, people don't have a choice but to buy what is being offered on a resale. And you can ask for top dollar at that point. Like there's no way I could have done that if I bought Game Day Men's Health and very soon after would have sold it. But now, given the fact everything throughout my area and the entire country is sold out, I recognize that as a brand that was going to happen with.
Hmm.
I jumped on, and I couldn't even jump on it quickly enough. Right? Everything in my market, I'm in southeastern PA. I had to default 2 hours into New Jersey because everything started selling so fast in my market.
Wow.
So that's an ideal situation to be in.
Hmm.
But it doesn't always line up that way. But there's plenty of brands that you can watch and keep your eye on, that you can tell once the right organization is behind them, once the capital is behind them, once the right, and there's a couple different types of organizations, but once the right organization, that brand's on their radar, they bring it into their portfolio and they have the infrastructure to scale, the capital, they have the franchise expertise. And if it's the right group, and there's only a handful of them, because there's dozens of them out there, but if it's the right group, I know at that point that brand's going to take off around the country.
Interesting. Okay, let's explore that a little bit because I'll take you down the rabbit hole of our business in a bit. We probably about 10 years ago, one of the things that the same mentor was teaching us how to do was take our existing service-based sales business and move that service-based business into another market. So real estate team helps people buy and sell real estate, move that into another market. Now, he's like, in order to do that effectively, you need a solid lead gen model, you need a solid operations model, you need a solid financial model, you need all the systems in place in order to execute that play. So we did an audit of our business and realized, wow, there's all these gaps that we have, and we need to fill in the gaps before we start, opening up some of these offices. And we probably filled in like 75% of the gaps, not fully all of them. And we started, because you don't always know what you don't know, and we started opening up offices in other markets, right? Different MLSs, different customs, different ways of doing business. And I realized, wow, it is hard to expand and replicate these businesses in other markets. And they're not terribly profitable, because and our model is not a franchise model, it's an ownership model. Like we own them, our corporate owns them 50-50 with operators on that local market,
Okay.
right? And then we take a servicing fee off the top, which is kind of like a franchise servicing fee off the top, and then a 50-50 profit model. And I'm like, that economic model works really so substantially better than, let's say, in my opinion, like what it would take for a franchise like organization. Like you would just need a lot of them, right? And even in our model, you need a lot of them in order to make a lot of money. So I was like, how do these franchise companies do it? And you kind of gave a clue, right? They're backed. They help maybe scale a concept. I'd love to get some insight on that because you said, hey, there's organizations that take these to market and crush it, and there's probably a handful of them that are really good, and then there's others that are terrible.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, the two entities that are really out there, one is called an FSO, or franchise sales organization. These are entities that will bring a brand if they have the right elements. They check all the boxes that, strong unit economics, good management team. They have capital behind them. They have the infrastructure to scale behind them. If they check those boxes and then a lot more, they may bring them into their portfolio. There's dozens of those groups out there. In my opinion, there's only 4 that are really good. So I only will deal with those four organizations because I know there's a really good chance the brand's going to take off if they bring them into their portfolio. So they look for those elements, bring in brands that already exist, already franchised, have all those elements, and then they help those brands grow. And typically, what they're getting out of it, they're going to take half the franchise fee up front. They're going to take maybe a half a point of the royalty fee on the back end, or maybe 10% ownership stake in the business.
Got it.
Then there
Interesting.
are another entity, I call them brand aggregators. These are organizations that actually buy the brands. They own the brands. Sometimes they'll leave management in place if it's a competent management team. Sometimes they'll just buy it out completely. But if they then those aggregators are providing the infrastructure. They're providing the support platform. They're providing the infrastructure to scale. They're providing the capital behind the brand. They're providing all the expertise. So they just seek out fledgling companies usually, and sometimes it's a company that's a little more evolved. They buy the company, they put it on their platform, and they start moving it around across the country. Sometimes you'll even see these brand aggregators. They buy a brand, they put it on their platform, and then they contract with one of the top FSOs to help them sell. So typically franchise companies in those scenarios, that's why you need a lot of capital if you're going to do franchising as a franchisor, because you're giving away all the franchise fee up front. They're not making money. Most franchise companies really don't start making money until they have about 100 franchisees
Yeah.
in their
Yeah.
system.
I can see that, which is like a lot of work, a lot of complexity, a lot of personalities, a lot, right?
Yeah.
There's, there's a lot there. And if, you know, I can imagine that there might be some franchises out there that just don't have the dollars to support their franchisees effectively, unless they get partnered with a company like this, or there's something, right, in order to execute the play.
I wouldn't even, if I were considering a franchise, you don't even come to the table unless you're willing to invest 10 million bucks at an absolute minimum. And still that would scare me. I don't work with brands that are standing alone, doing it on their own. Okay. Do some make it? Yes. But a disproportionate number of those fail versus the brands that have a good FSO or a good aggregator behind them, or both behind them. I mean, it's stark, the difference between the two.
Interesting. Fascinating. Well, this is kind of a selfish question, but there's probably, you know, other people listening to this right now that are very, they may have a core machine. We call it a cash machine in our language, like the core business, like a sales team that's, doing three, four, five, $6 million a year, or an acquisition team that's buying, a number of houses every year and probably similar in revenue. And they want to start building some of these vertically integrated businesses, or buying some of these vertically integrated businesses. Case in point for us, like property management makes sense, title makes sense, mortgage makes sense. Are there any franchises out there in the space that are somehow tied into that game?
Yeah, you just named three.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so there's all types of things that tie into property management, and there's also things that tie into property management from the standpoint of taking care of the property, not just property management, but also, hey, landscaping, all the trades, the HVAC, the electrical, the plumbing, all those sorts of things.
So
And
there's a franchise for everything, essentially.
anything that can be a business can be franchised, and probably has been franchised.
Okay. Okay. So how do you then go about matching your clients with the right franchise?
So my first step is I'll typically have an initial conversation with them. That conversation may last 15 minutes to a half hour, just to kind of ascertain it's going to make sense for us to work together, because it doesn't always make sense depending upon what their goals are. And I will tell you, I work particularly well with people when my marching orders are, Bob, show me the best financial opportunities. I don't care what the widget is, as long as it's ethical, provides a valued service to the community, and usually semi-passive, because most of my clients are looking for semi-passive. I don't work well with ideologues, people to come to me and say, I love my dog, I want to be in something pet related. I love cooking, I want to be in something food related. And first thing I try to do is talk them out of food.
Yeah.
Food is a tough category.
Hmm.
But when I start working with the candidate, we first determine does it make sense for us to work together? So that's the initial conversation. If it does, then I send them, or Megan, my assistant, will send them a confidential questionnaire. Takes them maybe 20 to 30 minutes to complete that, gets the ball rolling. Then we follow that up with a consultation. We'll spend an hour on a Zoom call together, review the confidential questionnaire. I'm just in information collection mode at the beginning. Once I have all the data that I need, now I'm in a better position to start identifying brands that I think will be a good fit for them. So I may start, casting a wide net at first, do a series of territory checks to see what's available in their market. Whittle the list down. I don't want to put too many brands in front of someone to start with, but maybe the list will consist of a half a dozen brands. On the follow-up call that we do, I put in front of them, we start discussing those brands, and hopefully there might be two, three on the list that say, Bob, these are interesting looking. I'd like to dive into them and learn about them. And then I help them dive into those brands, investigate the brands. I mean, the process when I start with somebody could be 8, 10, 12, 14, 16 weeks. I've worked with some people for 3 years. Don't want to do that all the time, but that has
Hmm.
happened on and off. But once we, take them through this process, and it's a process of elimination until we find the right brand. If the first round of brands don't click, then we move on to a second round of brand. Usually, if I'm doing my job properly, the first round, we're going to find something really solid in there because I'm going to try to show the best financial opportunities there are. I also help with financing. I work with all the top financing sources to the franchise industry. Rare that I can't get somebody financed, and there's lots of different methodologies for that.
That's cool. That's cool. Yeah. I didn't even know that there was like specific, I know about the SBA, but I didn't know that there might be like, there's probably a whole bunch of different slew of ways of
Yeah,
getting finance out
yeah.
there.
I mean, home equity, there's portfolio loans,
Hmm.
there's the ROBS program, 401k rollover, where you can roll funds if eligible, depending upon whether with their current company or they're
Mm.
controlling it. You can roll funds out of an IRA or a 401k into a business without taxation penalty or interest. So most of my clients, if they're eligible for that, they go down that path. A little more complexity to it because it has to roll into a C corporation. So I'd introduce them to a really good accountant that really understands that and can help them set.
I guess, when you buy real estate, you can't self-deal that way. You can't buy something that you're going to own. Is it, I guess maybe there's some kind of rule that you can, if it's a C corporation, not for real estate specifically, but for a business.
Yeah. Yep.
That's cool. I've got to go explore that. I could see that being a huge way to finance a lot
Yeah.
of
I
these.
don't. I've never been asked if it can apply to real estate, and that's. I'm curious now. That's
Well,
interesting.
we use our self-directed IRA to buy real estate all the time,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But I can't buy it. Normally, we're lending the money, right, to somebody else, and that's how we do it.
Gotcha. Okay.
And so what happens is like I'll like I can't use my self-directed IRA money to go buy a business that I'm going to go a building where I'm going to operate my business out of. Like that's a no-no, right? Or you can't lend the money to a family member. Like that's also a no-no with the self-directed IRA. There's got to be like an arm's length type of transaction. In the world of real estate, I'll be curious to like explore a little bit around businesses, right? That's cool. Um, yeah, consult your CPA, consult your advisor, right?
There you go.
With something like that. Well, Bob, how long normally does it take then for somebody to kind of they know for sure they want to do this? Is it like a 6 month process, a 3 month process?
It's usually in the 3 to maybe 4 month range. We're able to identify the right franchise, and they end up, getting the financing in place and going forward with it. Uh,
Do you
and
think
I,
of it as a rate? Do you think of it as a rate of return for them? Or is that how many of your clients are thinking about it? They might say, "Hey, listen, I know I can get 10 in the stock market,
yeah,
10%, right, compounded
yeah,
annually. I'm looking for something better than that, 15, 20, 30." What's the frame of
yeah.
this?
A lot of people do look at it that way, and but it's a little bit different in that the market you're going to put money in, and you don't need to do anything else. Now, a lot of people do a lot else because they're day trading and they're constantly moving things around.
Yeah, it's a job.
But But with franchising, if you're getting into a semi-passive franchise, one that can truly be operated semi-passive, a lot of franchise companies will call their concepts from semi-passive. A lot of them are not. But with those types of concepts, you're going to trade some time for a much better rate of return. And in
Hmm.
some cases, I mean, again, I mean, using the example with Game Day Men's Health and 30K now with my first unit dropping to the bottom line, my rate of return, my investment that was all cash was about 350K, so it's 100%
Hmm.
year now, and
Hmm.
I'm accomplishing that after 17 months, and it's growing. I'm only open 3 days a week, and I have a little more capacity within those 3 days. I will go to a fourth day eventually as my membership continues to build, and it builds every day. I'll go to a fifth day and eventually a 5.5 day. Some of the units that opened a little before me, 5, 6 months before me, the oldest unit is like 2 years at this point, but some are already doing over $200,000 a month. One in Ankeny, Iowa, last month did 229,000. Go figure.
That's wild.
Oh, it's nuts, man. And again, I recognized as an opportunity. I put a lot of my clients into that brand. Had to do it real quick because it just sold out. So, and that's what you see when the brands when you can recognize a brand this is a strong financial opportunity in a hot category,
Hmm.
and it's not a fortune to get into. It's going to go real quick. Uh, and I do have, the people that I work with, because I've been doing this for so long and I have a good reputation in the industry, and the volume I do, that allows me to often get my clients in front of other people. So if I'm working with a particular brand and people are vying for the same territory, and sometimes there's 5, 6, 7 parties trying to get the same turf, I usually win out in those situations.
Bob, where does somebody fail in all this, right? They come, they choose a brand. Is the failure point where they just don't follow the model? They try to put their own secret sauce on it. Like,
Yeah, I mean, two things. One, you just mentioned. I mean, good recipe for failing is not following the model. Some are so strong that even if you don't follow the model, you typically are going to succeed anyway. But others can't withstand that. So following the model, as long as it's a good system you're getting into. Then secondly, it's capital. Did I come into this with too little capital? Some of these brands will sell if you can barely scrape it together to get it open, they don't care. They sell to you. Okay.
got it.
I will not work with those brands. I think they're making a huge mistake, and I think in the long run it hurts their system. The work. I mean, basically, the way I approach this with and I'll give you some insight here. When I'm working with a client, I explain to them there's basically three buckets of franchises, and in each of those buckets has nothing to do with the type of franchises. They all have a cross section of the same types of franchises in them. The buckets have to do with the growth curve of where the franchise is in its evolution now. The first bucket are big brands like Subway, even Certapro Painters, which half my clients I mentioned they never heard of. It's a painting franchise, sold out
Hmm.
across the country. Subway sold out. Brands like that, it's nearly impossible to get into, nor would you want to get into it, real simply because all of the tier one and tier two territories are sold. The only thing that might be available are tier three territories. The
Hmm.
territories that the franchise company wouldn't sell in the early stages, now they're willing to sell because everything else is sold. So those types of opportunities really scare me. And a lot of people, I start working with them. Hey, I want to be in a big brand. I want to be in something that's recognized. No, you don't. Trust me. Those opportunities, those are over. Then there's a bucket, the middle bucket, or stagnant brands. These are brands that just cease to grow or maybe even contracting. 9 times out of 10, if a brand is not growing, it's for one reason: poor validation, meaning the franchisees aren't happy. So if a candidate starts going through the process with that brand, learning about them, going back and forth with calls with the brand, eventually you're going to talk to franchisees. If the franchisees say, I wasn't trained properly, I'm not supported properly, I'm not making money, you're going to run from those brands.
Hmm.
Absolutely avoid that
Hmm.
category.
Hmm.
Category I try to focus on, I'd say 90% of my clients fall in this category, are emerging brands. Doesn't mean necessarily it's a new brand. The word emerging kind of indicates that, but not necessarily. In that, like Game Day Men's Health, when I first started tracking it, it was already 5 years old. They had
Hmm.
six corporately held units that corporate owned in Southern California, but the unit economics were phenomenal on them. So it caught my attention. They just franchised, sold a few franchises, but I wasn't ready yet. when they got into the portfolio of what I would consider the top FSO in the industry, I knew all hell was about to break loose, and that's when I
Got it.
jumped into it. But that was, a 5-year-old brand, 6-year-old brand at that point. I've seen it happen with 10-year-old brands, and then they just blow up across the country. But it could be a brand. It doesn't scare me if the brand's 2, 3 months old, if the right organization is getting behind it, because they
Hmm.
saw all the right elements with it. They have all the key markers in place that that brand's going to be successful. Now they're going to take it to the next level.
For whatever reason, whenever I think of franchises, what's the name of the gentleman that started 1-800 Got Junk, and then he did like the painting one?
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. And I cannot remember. I can't
Yeah,
remember the
he
name.
wrote the painted picture. It was like part of what is, the way he built 1-800 Got Junk was he sat down, at Parents Lake and literally just dreamed it up, right? And said, "This is what I want it to be." But then he's built. It sounds like he's built a couple other franchises, piggybacking off of that.
Yeah.
So his name escapes.
Once you do it once and you understand the model, it makes sense to do that. But in that category, that's an example of a very successful category. I mean, there's some really successful players, and there's some players that just didn't have the right capital behind them and didn't grow. But there's 1-800 Got Junk. There's College Hunks and Haulers. There's Junk Luggers. There's one more out there that I like. I can't think of the name of it offhand. And then there's a handful of ones that just aren't that great. But again, example of a really good category. You may jump into that full time for the first year, but then you can take a big step back, and it's not a difficult business to run.
Hmm. Hmm. So what is your definition of semi-passive?
That's a great question, and there's lots of definitions depending upon who you talk to. I mean, to me, if it's like some of these brands will call their models semi-passive, and but they require you to step in at 25 hours a week. That's not semi-passive, in my opinion. I mean, if it's below 15 hours a week, or maybe for a limited period of time, somebody jumps into something and they're putting maybe the 20, 25 hours a week in for a couple, 3 months until it's stood up, and then they can take a big step back and put in, a few hours a week. But I would say typically starting at 10 to 15 hours a week while you're in the launch phase, maybe for up to 6 months, and then being able to start stepping back gradually from that until you get it to a point where maybe you're doing a 1 hour Zoom call per week.
Okay. Well, Bob, if people wanted to learn more, somebody listening to this right now, it might be a real estate entrepreneur out there thinking, hey, I want to buy a deck company or a fence company or an HVAC company franchise. Like, what's the best way to reach out to you?
Go to my website. It's real simple, franchisewithbob.com. If you want to reach out to me by text or give me a call, real simple, 610-506-0002. Best way to reach me. Or you can email me at bob@franchisewithbob.com.
Any final thoughts before we sign off
No,
to our
I'd,
income
I'd
flip?
love I'd love to hear more about what you do. Maybe we can pick it up offline.
Yeah, I
Like
just high level. I'll give you a high level version. We could talk afterwards offline as well a little bit. But we run a vertically integrated real estate business. So it started with a core sales team that sells like 400 houses a year, and then from that we started saying, well, it probably makes sense to own a title business or a portion of the title business, and maybe it makes sense to own a portion of a mortgage business. So we started building some of these vertically integrated businesses or partnering with established players and then forming branches, JVs with them, which is probably a form of franchising, when you think of it. And then we built property management, still in its infancy. We'd started one 15 years ago, sold it, rebuilding another one, and we've done that in construction, like pre-sale renovations, getting properties up and running, property management, title, mortgage, and acquisitions. So buying, 3 to 4 properties a month that we then turn and sell. And what I've and Grid, by the way, Grid is we're a 30,000 person real estate investment community and growing. And I've got operators that license our play in all these markets. Because what I learned was that Grid was a lead generation tool for me locally to be able to to open up these other vertically integrated
Gotcha.
businesses.
Okay.
And so it is the lead gen model that helps fuel all of those businesses. And agents are the tip of the spear many times when it comes to referring title, mortgage, insurance, construction. And so the challenge becomes, in order to run any of these from a semi-passive perspective, you need the right operators. You need the right who's in the seat executing the play, and you need really good defined playbooks in order to make sure that that who is successful, right? And and so while we've never bought a franchise, I think that there's so much that we've learned in this game that's always had me think about, okay, what would it look like instead of building something completely from scratch? Buying a just a company that just does roofs or decks or fences, because that, or junk calling for that matter, instead of building it from scratch. And so we about a year ago we realized what we want to do is just own a portfolio of different businesses and implement an operating system that we've gotten good at operating, that's been good for us to help develop these businesses. So anyhow, that's a little bit about us. It's been a 20-year journey as we figure it out.
Yeah, true entrepreneurial journey. Love it, man. And
Yeah,
well
yeah.
integrated.
Well, the challenge becomes, and I remind myself and anybody listening, it's like it's hard to be good at a lot of things, right? You have to pick one of them and become like the best in the world at. And for us, that's our core main sales team, because
Yeah.
that's what we've started, that's what we're good at. But it has allowed us to be able to find the right operators in those other brands, in those other businesses, so that they can be the best in the world at what they do, and we're supporting them with lead generation and marketing and some
Yeah.
systems.
Your
Right?
sales team is your hub.
Yeah, sales team is the hub for
Yeah.
sure.
Love it,
Right.
man.
Bob, thank you so much for sharing time on the Income Flip podcast with me
My
today, man.
absolute
I
pleasure.
appreciate it.
Thanks, Rob.